We're here on time. Good evening, everyone. It's really nice to see you all after our break that I'm sure felt like not at all a break to any of us as we sought to pass budgets in our local jurisdictions and continue to manage the WMATA board in Paul's case. But it is really nice to see everyone's faces. This is the executive committee meeting of the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission. We are beginning at 6:03 by my clock, and of course, due to the ongoing public health emergency, we are conducting this meeting electronically. Let it be known, our staff followed all necessary procedures in the enabling legislation for emergency virtual meetings to give sufficient notice to the commissioners, to the staff, and to the public. And as always, this meeting is being live streamed, and broadcast to the public on our YouTube platform. As always, if you could mute your microphone when you're not speaking, and no public business conducted over the chat. Kate, could I turn to you to call roll for purposes of assembly here?
Absolutely, happy to do so. Please respond here or present when you hear your name. Chair Crystal.
Here.
Mr. Aguirre. Ms. Filler-Korn. She's going to join us a little bit later. Mr. Letourneau.
Present.
Mr. Meyer. Ms. Palchik.
Present.
Mr. Smedberg. Oh, I saw him. Mr. Smedberg. Actually, it looks like he may have dropped off. Okay, we'll see if we can get him back. And Mr. Snyder.
Here.
Wonderful, good evening. And other commissioners that are joining the call, Ms. Mitchell.
Here.
Great. And staff who are present, I'm Executive Director Kate Mattice, the Director of Finance and Administration, Scott Calcorth, Legislative Liaison, Amy Perrin-Seibert, Legal Counsel, Steve McIsaac, and Web and IT Manager, Melissa Walker. And I am going to provide some information to Mr. Meyer, so he may be joining the meeting shortly.
Fantastic. And it does look like we have Mr. Smedberg back.
Oh, fantastic.
He's engaged in very important business and therefore has himself on mute, but let the record show.
All right, very good.
All right, everyone. Just as our first quick order of business, the meeting summary of our February 4th meeting. Did anyone have any corrections to that summary that was circulated of our last executive committee meeting? Okay, hearing none. One of the big items that we have on our agenda tonight is the 395-95 projects. And so I'm going to turn it to Kate to just give this group of exec a quick preview of the joint meeting, our joint commission working group on 395 and 95 projects. So Kate, over to you for that summary.
Fantastic, I'm happy to do so. And actually what I may do, if you're okay, I may go ahead and stop sharing the screen so we can just see everybody's faces. Does that work?
I love that. Yes, please.
Great. All right. Fantastic. Thanks so much. So indeed, the 395-95 Joint Commission Working Group met a little bit earlier this week, actually joint with the Program Advisory Committee to review the scoring results and the staff proposed programming approach for the commuter choice in the I-395-95 corridor for its second round of funding. And so the staff recommended to the committee actually funding all of the 13 eligible projects, obviously subject to the public comment, and that period is open right now. And of course, that would also include our ability to administer the program over 2 years, some administrative costs with that. And so as I mentioned, the Joint Commission Working Group did meet and they supported the staff approach. So that's something that the commission will be briefed on this evening. There's no action on that at this meeting. What we'll be doing is coming back after the public comments are closed and presenting a recommendation to the commission for approval at our June meeting. And so again, as I mentioned, we've got 13 proposals. They actually can all be accommodated within the available funding. And just on a little aside, for those of you who are following, and we're going to talk a little bit about traffic later in the meeting. Traffic congestion on a number of our corridors is really getting pretty bad. And the 395-95 corridor is one of those places where the tolls are almost back to where they were pre-pandemic. That is anecdotal based upon my information, but we actually are waiting for some information on Transurban. But as somebody who travels that corridor regularly, I would like to say the traffic volumes seem to be up on those morning commute times. So again, we've got public comment that's open right now through May 17th. We've actually already received 21 comments on those proposed projects. And that's basically what I wanted to share with all of you.
Thanks, Kate. So again, this is our preview. We'll hear a little more in depth about the projects tonight, but any questions for Kate about the proposals that have been advanced or the workings of that joint committee with PRTC? All right. I agree. It will be interesting to see those traffic counts, and I imagine the Commonwealth is tracking 66 as well.
Oh, absolutely. And if I could, Madam Chair, with Mr. Snyder here, I don't know if he wants to make any mention. A second part of that meeting was the Program Advisory Committee, diving into a number of things. And I don't want to put you on the spot, Mr. Snyder, but did you have any things you wanted to share from that element of the meeting?
Yeah, so I think it was decided that we're gonna do a supplemental round of project awards after the summer. The total revenue has increased much more gradually on I-66 than 95, apparently. And we do have some money available from outside the Beltway for inside the Beltway. So we had taken action last year to suggest that in the spring we might do a supplemental. I think we're going to move that to early this fall. Kate, am I summarizing things accurately at this point?
You are indeed. I mean, obviously, we're watching very closely. What we do know is we're anticipating at least $5 million from the Commonwealth. So the question is, what else, are we seeing from VDOT in terms of additional funding? And again, this body will be able to decide whether to take action for something this fall or have that money roll into a bigger program moving forward. So I think there's a lot of staff conversations that are going on right now. So obviously, we'll continue to engage, but there may be action on this in the fall.
Right. I think I would just amend what Kate said, that the basic approach that we've taken so far is for a supplemental. So that would require sort of a change in direction to not use the money that's available for some of the projects that weren't funded, that scored well, but weren't funded because of the dramatic cut in available funds due to the pandemic. So just to provide additional background to what Kate said. Thanks.
Thanks. That's interesting to hear that the tolls have recovered faster on 395, 95 than 66. All right. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Snyder and the Program Advisory Committee? Or Ms. Matthijs? All right. Seeing none, so again, that's the hearing about those recommended projects on 95 through 95 will be on our agenda tonight, but no action yet. Got a few other highlights to preview for everyone this evening. Kate, did you want to speak to any of those?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, obviously, in this having these online meetings, we do accept public comment, and we actually did get 3 comments that I forwarded to all of you before the meeting. And so one of them relates to encouraging Metro increasing and returning to full service. Obviously, we just saw a little bit of press on that. And the second one is actually talking about Nvtc's approach to including disadvantaged businesses in our engineering contracts. And so we don't actually have engineering contracts, but in general, just for your benefit, when we do use procurements, we often end up riding on some of the procurement actions of the state or localities, and all of them have recognition and use of disadvantaged businesses. It happens to be on any of the small contracts that we have some communications and some employee training. We actually happen to have women-owned businesses on a couple of those contracts too. So again, the public comment was about us on engineering contracts. That's not something we typically do, but I just want to at least put that out there for the record. That's something we're very mindful of in the way we do any procurements. And the last one is actually a comment in support of 2 of our commuter choice projects. So we'll roll those into the commuter choice docket. And so it's always great to get comments, obviously, when we have an open public comment period on a project solicitation. So that's in terms of the public comments. The other things I just want to highlight, we do have our consent agenda, which is our standard electronics meeting resolution. We also have just permission to me to send a letter that we are required every year that we're sending, certifying that we've received certain documents from Amada. So those are fairly standard routine things. Next action that we have is a technical amendment to our I-66 agreement. And I'll do a little bit, but I'd happy if Jennifer wanted to add a little bit. There was recognition in reviewing the I-66 MOA that there's a statement in what we refer to as the waterfall that had mischaracterized, I think, how the state would be using and the amount of money that they would be available to access for debt service. So there's a technical language, but it specifically does not touch at all any of the funding that would be coming to Nvtc. And so we've been working with Jennifer, Steve McIsaac, and the attorneys. And so at least staff recommendation, we see this as incredibly benign from our perspective. I mean, Jennifer, obviously this is very meaningful for what you guys need to do.
Yeah, it literally was, I think, just a drafting error. None of us can figure out how it got in there, to be honest. It's what it did was it unintentionally limited the amount of debt service for rail components to the amount that would be an amount not to exceed the annual Nvtc contemplated payment. But what we actually meant was that it should exclude the Nvtc payment. So it was something that as we were doing some financial planning, actually one of our financial advisors pointed it out, and we looked at it and we're like, oh yeah, it doesn't say what it means. So it really is a technical correction. We made a few other just minor cleanups with some naming conventions, but nothing else, nothing that has any substantive impact. So,
And Steve and I concur upon our review with that. So, so that is up for action. The third item that's up for action are actually the VRE operating and access agreements and the amended master lease agreement with CSX. Again, I don't know, Steve, if you want to say anything about that. Obviously, those folks on the ops board followed this very closely. Katie,
sure, Kate. This is Steve. Yeah, these amendments really reflect the fact that CSX now owns far less of the right-of-way than it once did, but otherwise, in virtually every respect, it maintains the status quo. The one thing I would say particularly is that our posture with regard to CSX on our station leases is greatly improved. We'll now be paying for certain a nominal amount for those station sites. I will say that most of our station facilities are not going to be on the Commonwealth-owned property, but nonetheless, it's always good to make sure that CSX is not getting more than they really should be getting for what stations we do have. So we think this agreement is about as good as it can get with CSX, and certainly recommend it to you.
Great. Questions on that one? Or anything else, including the 66 MOU amendments? Okay. Well, just as a reminder, we have a closed session on a very personnel matter. You all got those materials from me earlier in the week. If you don't know what I'm talking about, please send me a note and I would be happy to resend them to make sure you got them. Okay. So looking ahead, I'm going to turn to Kate to give us a preview about a few upcoming commission activities, and then I would like to start a conversation with this group about if and when we would like to return in person and in what manner. So Kate, want to give us some previews about what's coming down the pike?
Absolutely. And indeed, one of the things you're going to get a preview of tonight's commission meeting is our general administrative budget, which I'm sure to many of you think you've heard it 7 times over. But we actually are going to be presenting that tonight for action in June. And so that proposed budget is consistent with the direction that we were provided by you several months ago. But I want to make sure we didn't miss that. But when it comes to upcoming activities with the commission, we do have a WMATA committee meeting scheduled on May 20th at 6 p.m. And then there's actually another one again already scheduled for June 30th. And so the WMATA committee will be rolling up their sleeves and diving into our 2021 annual report. And also our 3% cap working group will be reconvening to work on some supplemental work that we had promised the commission, so that working group will also be briefing the committee. And again, all of this stuff will come back to the commission in future meetings. The other thing I wanted to mention that several of you had heard at our program advisory committee is we're actually working on a multi-pronged effort for our July meeting to provide the commission with some case studies, policy considerations, and actually talking a little bit about state programs available for low and reduced fare transit services. And so we're working with all of our local bus providers to hear different proposals. We're looking forward to, I've been working with Jen DeBrule to talk about the TRIP program that DRPT has, and really provide to this board some things to think about. We're preparing a white paper about what are the different things that each jurisdiction or each transit system should be thinking about, especially in our networked region, about how to approach low and no fare transit services. So again, we're going to be bringing that to the July meeting, and hopefully for a good discussion on that. And finally, the last thing I wanted to put out there is, and I'll be mentioning this evening, we've had 2 years of no staff leaving Nvtc, which I think I'm actually very proud of. But we do actually, one of our staff, Matt Chang, he's our program analyst who he does all of our fabulous maps and GIS work. He works on our T-Best transit model, and actually he coordinated the jurisdictional, how the buses supported those shutdowns for Metro Rail stations both 2 summers ago and last summer. Well, he's going to be leaving Nvtc at the end of the month to go do graduate work up in Boston. So as I often say, I love giving people wings so they can fly. And so he's one that's going to be heading up. So I did want to I'll do a shout out this evening. But Matt is a real gem, and we will miss him. So that is what I have for the overview tonight and coming attractions.
And I don't know if Matt's with us now, but hopefully we'll have a chance to applaud him.
We'll embarrass him later.
Open session. Yes. If only we were eating, Costco sheet cake to coast his departure. He's been such an invaluable member of the team. Okay, great. Any questions about coming attractions? If none, so I wanted to, Kate and I were talking this the other day, and while we've got this kind of smaller group here, start a conversation that I suspect is not dissimilar from ones we've been having, those of us affiliated with jurisdictions, in our own jurisdictions, which is when and in what manner might we want to come back. Just as a quick reminder or sort of context setting, the emergency legislation passed by the General Assembly, thank you, General Assembly, allows commissions like Nvtc, as well as, of course, our bodies back in the jurisdiction, to have electronic meetings without a physical quorum present. And just for sort of reference here, a quorum is 11 members of the commission. So we, of course, have been 100% electronic. We actually haven't allowed or even had the option for commissioners to assemble in person. Kate has been kind of checking in with the staff to see, what might be feasible. I think that at this point, the recommendation might in fact be so that if we did want to move forward, so that we could still be compliant with those sort of prohibitions on assembling large groups of people indoors, that we could do something like a hybrid model and have fewer than 11 commissioners come back. I know Mr. Snyder is also a member of the authority, or vice chair of the authority, and this is sort of the model that the authority has been using in recent months, which is that there are staff in the room and to support the members of the authority who want to come back with everyone else online. So that's one option. Kate, I think if we were to say, the commission were to come entirely back, in addition to not giving any choice, that might put us in violation of the number of people who can be in an enclosed room per current governor's orders, although that's constantly evolving. So as you can tell, right, there's sort of pluses and minuses to any of this. I don't know that I have a deeply held opinion, other than that I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone again. But I wanted to sort of start the conversation with this group and then figure out together maybe our next steps, whether we wanted to poll the commission, bring it up for informal discussion with the commission, et cetera. The last thing I'll say is that the public engagement, I think, has been working really well. As tonight would indicate, we've gotten more comments than we might usually have at just a sort of regular in-person meeting. I know thanks to the Nvtc staff's hard work, the live streaming has been going really well. And that will all continue, whether we are entirely virtual, entirely in person, or hybrid going into the future. So wanted to make that point about public engagement, which I think we're all really pleased about. So any thoughts, kind of things you're thinking about in your own jurisdictions that you think might have value here, what you personally would be interested in doing?
I know in Alexandria, we're probably not going to come back in person for our council meetings because we have a couple of folks that are either high risk or with high risk individuals. But personally, I don't mind that's what we're deciding.
Thank you. Okay. Dahlia, I saw a hand up there too.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, no, as you may know, we'll be coming back in person for our board meetings at the end of the month. I really like that hybrid model. You know, I miss in-person meetings, and I'm more than happy, and I can take the Metro all the way in, but I know some others, you know, it might be helpful to have that, but I'm happy to, as much as possible, volunteer to be in person so we can do hybrid.
Loudon, well, somebody's always been in the boardroom, but we've kind of gone back to all in person over the last few months. Depends on the committee, but the full board. I've been doing a few virtual here and there. My own situation with some more surgery and stuff coming up may make it hard for me to get in person, but I really miss, particularly with Nvtc, I really miss the ability to get to know my regional colleagues better, especially some of the newer ones, and have some of these kind of side conversations that we would always have. That, you know, it's just not the same to schedule a call and talk, you know, all that. It just isn't, you know. So I think for our group, if we can get at least some folks back, and I'd like to be one of them as soon as I can be, then that'd be great. So.
Great, thank you.
Katie, this is Paul. I think it would be beneficial to bring as many people back as possible, especially given the issues that we'll all have to be discussing as you continue to lead on recovery and getting people back to work and schools and university students and what have you. And I think it would be important to have as many people as possible in person.
Thank you. Excellent.
I'm sorry.
Please, I think you were next, Dave.
One of the questions I have is that if you attend in person, do you have to bring your computer with you, or will it be like televised from a central camera? I find it better if you do it the latter rather than the former. So what are the capabilities of Nvtc? Or do we all have to lug our laptops there and look half at the laptop and half of the people in the room? How would you actually do a hybrid meeting?
So Madam Chair, if I could, those are some of the technology questions that I've been working with our team here. One of the benefits, if you recall, when the building was renovated, was actually putting in place a camera, big screens, and a speaker system. Now, it's been over a year. So what I want to do and what our staff want to do is actually practice and play with that system. We've been able to live stream directly to YouTube. We were doing that before we were doing the quarantine environment. But what we hadn't done was live stream and WebEx. And so that's what I really ask, is our ability to test that out. We know probably a lot easier could be the model where everybody brings in a laptop because they're just working off the Wi-Fi. But the room is technically equipped, but I would like us to test it. And not necessarily in a everybody's there and we're going live. So, and that's part of the reason. And I, when the chair and I had this conversation, and I said I need to get back to the staff, you know, eyeing which meeting that could be where we do that, knowing if we've got a little bit more than just a couple weeks till our June meeting, perhaps it's our July meeting we target, would make me feel a little more comfortable in the technology thing. But of course, obviously we'll follow, you know, your desires.
That's a great set of questions too, because I think if thinking about the authority, sometimes it has been, there've been some hiccups along the way, right? Somebody's computer is too close to somebody else's computer. And so I think if it's possible, right, to engineer that setup and take advantage of the technology foundation that's been laid, I'm with Dave in thinking that would be a preference. Yeah, Amy. Oh, here is Amy to tell us what is within the four corners of the law that enables us to meet virtually. A very important perspective.
Well, I probably defer totally to, you know, to Steve on that too, as your actual attorney. But I will say that certainly I think, you know, I talked to Kate about it, and I've talked with some of my colleagues, and I do think a hybrid model is perfectly fine under the current order and the current law, and you know that you wouldn't need the quorum could be obtained both virtually and in person. It doesn't have to be just in person or just virtually. So I think you could do that. It really is sort of silent on that issue when you're doing that, because it basically says you may meet electronically. It doesn't say you have to meet electronically. So if you're able to do that, The only thing I will say, and just in case this comes up at a larger meeting, the governor did hold a press conference today, and there was a lot of confusion about what he said about when the orders were going to be changed, whether or not the executive order would continue after June 15th, which is when it's supposed to run out. Part of the meeting, it sounded like he said he was going to lift it completely then, but then at the end of the meeting, it sounded like they probably would have to extend it because frankly, you have to be able to wear masks. You'd have to have the governor's order. And even if you wanted to voluntarily wear masks, because it's against the law in Virginia to wear a mask. And that law did not change. And so you'd have to have an executive order that would allow people even voluntarily to wear masks in public. So there's some tricky things there too. I did leave a message for the chief of staff just to let him know too that, we wouldn't be able to do any sort of hybrid models of electronic meetings. We'd have to go completely back to in person as a regional board if they lift the governor's order. We'd have to go back because it would be required to have a quorum in person. So I just wanted them to think about that too when they're thinking about whether they do re-up that executive order or not. So when I have more information about that, I'll let you know, but I just wanted you to, in case it comes up, the press conference was today and there was a lot of confusion about is everything over on June 15th? Is it not? And I don't think there's an answer for that. But I just wanted to let you guys know that that was discussed today.
Thank you for bringing that up. We're proceeding like it's our decision about how we come back. We may be thrown into something.
Correct. So there is that is a little bit. So I think that's still I think an open question at this point.
And welcome, Madam Speaker. Thank you. I hope everything went well with giving blood. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I'm sorry I'm late, but good to see you guys.
No problem. We were, as you could probably tell, discussing kind of in what manner we'd want to come back and on what timeline. I think, I haven't, Mr. Meyer, you haven't chimed in. Do you have an opinion one way or another you wanted to share or thoughts?
Well, our city, thank you. Our city council is still meeting 100% virtually. We are in discussions right now. Some of the same technology questions that were discussed here, we've been working through. As Kanik said, we have 2 individuals out of 7 who are high-risk persons, so we will probably transition to a hybrid approach. Whether we do that before the end of June, or we begin after our August recess is still an open question. I thank you for asking. As far as my participation in the Nvtc, I'm certainly open to in-person or a hybrid approach. So it's fine.
Great.
Madam Chair.
All right. So I think there's. Oh, please, yeah, Mr. Aguirre.
I guess I should have quantified a little bit for us here in Alexandria too. We're definitely not coming back before July. If we come back in person, it'll be after our summer recess.
Okay. Thank you. So I think potential changes to the governor's order that Ms. Perrin-Seibert mentioned notwithstanding, if it is in our control and that executive order is extended, but I think maybe what I'm hearing is that there is interest in returning, especially where feasible. The option would be helpful. And we are interested in if the technology allows us to broadcast and hear one another from a singular screen versus using our computers, that would be great. So I think it would be helpful to give our staff a little time to try to work that out. I think our June meeting will be here before we know it. So maybe we aim for July. My other kind of takeaway as we talk is that this would probably be, again, if the executive order is extended, commissioners would have choices. So I don't know that we need to formally survey the body. I think this is maybe something we can sort of share for awareness as well. Anyone object to that path forward? Okay. And if the team tries it out in the next week or two and thinks, oh, this is going to be easier than we thought, and June's a possibility, let us know. Otherwise, we'll all kind of drive towards the expectation of July, I think.
Madam Chair, if I could, some of the things we're also thinking about that I'm happy to get feedback on is the food situation. And so it's interesting how the ability, even just boxed lunches of dinners, boxed dinners, and those sorts of things. So that's, there's some logistical things that aren't as exciting as quorum and engagement, but we definitely will want to get a sense of numbers, spacing in the room, how we'd set up the room. So probably getting a sense of, how many folks will make a difference of, The other thing we're checking, if you recall, and I know for some of you it's been a very long time, we have a large room that has a divider wall. We believe that the AV is primarily on one side of that wall. And so part of that is getting a sense of how many people can we do, 6 feet apart in a semicircle or in a square that can see and hear. And then also how would we do food service? And so those are the things that we're noodling over. If you have strong opinions, please just let me know.
Well, I don't know about you all, but in addition to my parents getting to see their grandson, one of the before times things I really miss is those great Nvtc meals. So I'm looking forward to down the line that coming back.
It may look a little different.
It's completely reasonable. Okay, so Kate, actually, I'm hearing you say that it would be helpful to get a sense of the commissioners about how many folks would like to come back. So why don't we do this? Maybe I'll mention it in sort of chair's remarks tonight, and we can follow up with just a pretty easy survey monkey about whether people would be interested in availing themselves of coming back, and if they were, would they be interested in doing so as soon as July?
Okay, wonderful, thank you.
So that we get a little more of a head count. Okay. All right. Anything else on that, or any of the topics covered this evening?
Yeah.
May was always Cinco de Mayo, Uncle Julio's month.
I know.
So I just thought of that.
You say I know as though you're taking personal responsibility for it. It is not your fault.
When I was chairman, it was kind of a thing for me. I really wanted to make sure we did that. So yeah. Kate, I'm sure knows that.
So Madam Chair and Mr. Letourneau, where we are with things like buffets, that's what we need to figure out.
Yeah, no, we went to our board meets at night with dinner too.
Yeah.
And we have a whole protocol now. It's all boxed individually meals instead of the.
So you know what I have seen done as well, and again, who knows where we'll be, but if the people that still want to do the buffets, just have somebody obviously standing there saying, what do you want, and putting them on your plate, so that not everybody helps themselves, but then that takes one person who's got to serve everybody, and obviously that person can be masked and with gloves, and they just put whatever on the plate, but then you need another person. It sounds like box might not be as exciting meals, but it's probably certainly a lot easier and less less people intense, time intensive, I guess. But who knows what the new norm will be, or will it always be just box lunch? I know we've got the same issues, I think all of us have to try to figure out what the new norm is.
I have to say, I thought the speaker was going to say the person could be Matt. That's where I thought you were going.
Only if it's Uncle Julio's, then Matt is.
Yeah, if it's Uncle Julio's, I'll do it.
Can we put that
Kate was watching the budget, and then at the end of the fiscal year, we could afford Uncle Julio's. So that was yes.
Kanik and I might be able to get you some better Mexican.
Well,
possible.
No, but this was like on the scale of public meeting food.
On a more serious note, can you just remind me again, what did we say about public comment? We would keep it the same.
Yeah. Absolutely. So people could submit comments online, and we handle them the same way we've been handling them, where Kate reads them for us. And then we would continue, and I think we plan to continue the practice of live streaming even when we are 100% back, right, Kate?
Yeah, and Madam Chair, in fact, we were doing that before we went into this, which thankfully we actually had some practice for a couple months doing that. The ability to provide public comment is actually a specific condition of the governor's order. By going virtual, we have public comment. I think that's an interesting conversation. Moving if that order goes away, we go back. What does that look like moving forward? As you know, some months we have comments, some months we don't. There may be value continuing that. That will be up to the commission.
Shortly before the pandemic, actually, VRE, which had never taken public comments online, just started doing that at the request of somebody who'd written in. And so I think they handled it much the way the commission has. And I mean, I don't know if others feel the same way, but I think it's provided a nice opportunity for residents, especially of the jurisdictions where, coming to the Arlington
The buffering.
Foster.
We were done anyway, right?
Yeah, I think so. She was just gonna say people
Madam
don't have to come
Chair.
so far.
We lost Madam Chair.
Lost her altogether. But we are completed. That was the end of the agenda for the meeting, and it's right on time for you guys to sign off, take a minor little break, and join us back at the commission meeting at 7 o'clock. I think, Madam Chair, are you back? I see your name. I guess I have the authority to finish the meeting.
Gives Matt enough time to
Vice
get
Chair.
that.
Mr. Vice Chair,
that
would you
Don
like?
Julio's. No, I was just gonna say we got enough time to go get Don Julio's, but Matt, I can make you some better guacamole sometime.
Oh, she can see us.
us.
She's like the ghost.
Oh, we can't see her.
Okay.
We'll see her in a few minutes.
All right.
All right. See y'all in a few.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.